Right, everybody, if you're here today, hopefully it's to follow some finishing instructions for Mr Velleti Gets Ready for Christmas, and this is for the bigger of the designs in the pack. You had your 3 little small Christmas designs, and this is the bigger one. So I've got that all stitched, and I've got it ironed, and I've got it trimmed down. I think I left a 2-inch or 1.5-inch margin around that one. I've also got my everything board from Chantel 141. I'm pretty sure that's the medium size. Yeah, that's medium. I've also got some paper to decoupage onto the board. So I've chosen this one. I think I may change my mind yet once I see how it looks. And that's from Simple Stories Snow Pine Lodge, and that's got lots and lots of different papers in there, so you're bound to find one you like. And we've got our decoupage adhesive. I think that's a European brand. I'm going to use, I'll show you the colour. I've got some chalk paint as well to use on that one. Oh, right, this is from a brand called Artiste, and that's just a European chalk paint. You can use any one you like, and that's called Caribe. I'm not going to try to say it. I don't speak French. And that's just Caribbean blue. It goes really nicely with that. So I'm going to paint my everything board with that. I've got some foam daubers for painting, and I've got some foam brushes for my decoupage. I've got cotton batting, really thin cotton batting. I use 100% cotton because that's what I have left over from quilting. I've got my hot glue gun and lots of glue sticks. And then I've got lots of trim. So I've picked just a bunch of ribbons, pom-pom trim that I had in the right colours. And I've got some little peppermint candies and some little trees and some Christmas lights. I got these from Hobby Lobby while I was in the US in August, but you can get them anywhere really. Amazon are readily available. And I've also got a bit of really stiff card. Right, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna paint our everything board. That's the one in size medium. So I'm just painting one side of this because I'm going to put some paper on the other side. So I think this is the back. I mean, it probably doesn't have a side that's a designated back, but I think that's gonna be it for me. And I've got my chalk paint and that beautiful Caribbean blue and my foam brush. Just get started. That's such a pretty colour. So this is just the back. If you want to leave it in the board, you're more than welcome to. It's taking that really well. I'll probably do a second coat just because these chalk paints are a little bit on the thinner side. Now I've decided I'm going to leave the edges just as they come. I quite like the way they're finished. But you're more than welcome to paint yours if you want. Right, I'm going to let that dry. It's a bit wet and miserable today, so it's probably going to take a little while to dry. Get that into all the little cracks and crevices. That's such a pretty blue. I quite like traditional Christmas colours, but these are quite fun. Right, let's let that dry, and then I think I'll put a second coat on that just so it's really well covered. Right, so the next step is to paint our mini hoop, which came with our everything board. If you're not using the everything board, don't worry, you don't have to do this. Or you could try to make your own, I guess. Now we're just going to paint that in the Caribbean blue. That's such a pretty color. And I'm going to do the back board as well. So make sure there's no bits showing once it's all together that don't look right. I'm going to end up with this paint all over my fingers. Now I am going to paint the edges. I think what I'll probably do is do the edges in a gold paint pen. But for the minute, I'm just going to put the blue on there. And then I've got options. I actually really like how the edges look on their own, so you could leave them plain if you want. Just make sure you get the inside edge of that hoop as well. And I'm going to do the back and the sides, just in case. Yep, I have very blue fingers. Right, I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to give my hands a very good wash. And then what I'll probably do is put a second coat on. Just to be sure. And give that at least 24 hours drying time, because we don't want to wreck any of our cross stitch with wet paint. That would be rather traumatic, wouldn't it? Right, once your mini hoop is all dried, we're ready to assemble a small cross stitch. So what I've done, once it's dried, I just added a bit of gold detailing. So I've got a gold paint pen, looks like this. And I've just added a gold touches here on the hoop, where that little screw would be on a real wooden hoop, just to give it a bit of detail. Right, so I've got my small cross stitch, which needs to go inside. That's it there. I've just pressed that and cut that out in a circle shape. And the next step, get that really thin hard card. And what you want to do is use the top of your hoop like that to trace onto the card. And then you need to cut that out, and that's what we've got here. And then you want to do the same with your batting. So put it on top, trace it round, and then cut it out, because you want this tiny cross stitch to fit just inside the top of the hoop. Right, so that's the back of the hoop and that's the top. Now to assemble, get your card, your batting, and then put that right in the center. And turn that over. Now, what I do is I'm going to lace this. You can use glue if you want, you can use hot glue, you can use craft glue. I like the way lacing looks, so that's what I'm going to do. I've got my needle and my thread, and I'm just going to go for it. So I use a loop on my tail to catch my thread, and then we're going straight across. What I do is fold my fabric over and then catch it through 2 bits so that I don't put too much tension on one little bit of linen. Right, I'm going to do that a couple times and just pull that really tight. And now we can go just around our circle shape, pulling it tight. And just going back and forth. You want to go opposite side to opposite side. And I'm going counterclockwise here. You can go clockwise if you want. And just keep working your way around. And keep pulling that really snug. You're going to have quite a bit of fabric back here. And that's fine. If you find it's really bulky when you're done, you can trim some of that off. And just keep pulling your fabric tight and crisscrossing your thread back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. See, we're starting to get there now. Don't need to have quite so many hands. Tell you what, when you're doing this kind of stuff, a few more hands would really come in handy. Right, we're getting there now. Let's just turn that over and see how that looks. See, that looks really good. Right, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to tie my thread off in the middle. Right, so that should hopefully, just trim my thread, fit inside my hoop. Yeah, that looks pretty perfect. So I'll make sure that's nice and straight. So that's the top of the hoop, that's the bottom. We want it to just sit on top. Perfect. So I'm going to glue top of my hoop to the bottom, and I'm using hot glue. You can use craft glue if you want, and just little dabs. I'm not going to use a lot, even though I love hot glue. I would happily use loads of it. I'm going to try and be sensible. Couple little dabs on the back, and then just line that up with the bottom. If there's any coming out the edges, try and get that before it dries. Don't burn yourself. I don't think I have any feeling left in my fingertips, so it doesn't bother me. Right, now we've got our little cross stitch, so that's going to go in the middle. That's going to fit in perfectly. You just want to make sure that's straight when you put it in. I think I need to straighten that up a little bit. Right, so I'm going to use hot glue again, and I'm going to put the glue in the middle. Just go around the edges. And just be really careful when you put it in that you have it as straight as you want it. I'm going to start with his head in first so I can make sure that's lined up. And then pop that in and just press that really firmly. And what I'm going to do is turn that over and press from the back. Right, so I'm happy with that. And we're ready to move to the next step, finishing our everything board. Okay, so both coats of paint have dried on the form now, and we're going to move on to the next step, which is putting our paper on the opposite side. So, as you probably remember, I'm using paper from Simple Stories No Pine Lodge range to Deco Patch. So that's going to be on the front. So I'm just going to turn it over and trace it onto the opposite side. This paper is reversible. I'm just going to line up my edges, so hopefully I don't have to cut quite as much. And trace that round with a really sharp pencil. And be sure to trace out this bit as well, because we need to cut that out. Right. Let's get our craft scissors and get to cutting. The main bit. Now I've just realised I've got to trace around this corner down here, so I'm going to do that now. Right now, to cut out that inner bit, just put your scissors through it, and then you can cut round. You want quite sharp scissors for this. Mine could do with being sharper, really. That's fine. This is going to be the back side of our finish anyway. Right. So that's the side we want. And now we're just going to decoupage that onto our board like this. So I'm using Deco paper adhesive. You can use Deco Patch or whatever is available in your area. I'm using a foam brush so I don't ruin all my other nice brushes, and I'm just gonna slather this on really generously. This does dry clear, so don't worry if you get a bit messy with it. You just want to make sure you get all the edges really well so your paper seals down nicely. Super thick. Right, I think we're just about there. I'm happy I got good coverage. I put my paper on now, just lining up the edges. And then seal that down, going from the middle out. And just make sure all your edges are nicely sealed. Like I said, that glue dries clear, so don't worry if it oozes out a little bit. Lovely. Now to protect the paper, I'm going to put a layer of the Deco Patch glue on top. And that's going to give it a nice shiny surface, just so it doesn't get marked or wrecked by anything once we're finished. So just be really generous with that and do a layer on top. And this glue is really good because it doesn't make the paper bleed, so you're not going to get any streaks or anything from the ink on your paper. Right, I'm happy that I've got glue across the whole top. Now we're going to leave that to dry. I would leave it at least 24 hours because you would just want that really super dry before you attempt to do anything with it. So we'll give that a good 24 hours and then we'll finish. Right, once that's had plenty of time to dry, that should be rock hard, like that. So I'm just going to sand the edges quickly, just to get that really nice smooth edge. Make sure I don't have any paper overhanging. There we go. Okay, so now we need to affix our cross stitch to the middle. So what I've done, I'll show you my cross stitch here. So I made a template, just an outline of my cross stitch, and I did that by hanging it up in a window, and then I put a piece of white paper on top, and then with the sun shining through, it acts like a light box, and I was able to just draw around. And I made a bit of cardboard, slightly bigger than my pattern, and then I cut out a piece of wadding, again slightly bigger than my cross stitch design, and then we just center that in the middle and make sure you have a little bit of that cardboard edge all the way around. Come up ever so slightly. Now once you're happy you've got that pretty much in the middle, we need to fix the cross stitch to the cardboard and the batting. Get this out of the way. Now I'm going to do that by lacing because I just prefer the way it looks. And I'm going to lace my two straight sides first. So we need really long bits of thread. Now I'm just going to start in the middle of my straight sides. Fold that over. Catch your fabric. I use the loop method, so I can just loop my needle through the end of my thread, and I know I've caught it. And then this side we're going opposite directly, again in the middle. Pulling that tight, and then you're just going to do like a corset type lacing, back and forth, just making sure you're pulling that thread really tight as you come across. Go. And once you've run out of thread, just tie that off. Now imagine this is going to be really dull to watch, so if you want to fast forward, by all means do. But we just keep doing that. Really long bits of thread. you what, our weather doesn't know what it wants to do today. Been really, really bright and sunny. And we got some cloud. We've had some rain. I guess that is England for you. Right. Now we're just going to go down the other side. So just like lacing a corset. Right, hopefully that'll be pretty central. Yeah, that's fine. And now we're just going to do top to bottom. I am using Gutermann cotton thread to do my lacing, and that's what I use for everything: sewing, cross stitch, threading, quilting. I like to use the natural fibers, but you certainly don't have to. Right, we're starting in the middle again, and we're going top to bottom, or bottom to top. And then working our way to my right. I said you might find you have to use lots and lots of thread to do this. It's just because it's quite a big cross stitch. And you can only make your thread so long or it'll be a bit unwieldy. So once you've got the hang of this, feel free to fast forward to the next step. Now you've got to be careful coming around the curves, that you pull all that fabric tight and you catch it all. Just fold those in. Like so. And just work your way across. Making sure those little corners are really neat and tidy, and you haven't got any big funny lumps sticking out when you turn it over. Right, we've done my right side, now we're going to do my left side. Again, just tucking in your corners. Like that. Just work your way across, making sure you tuck in any extra fabric. And keep pulling it really snug. And don't be afraid to pull that tight. I know it feels like you're going to rip your fabric, but you shouldn't do. I think I'm going to have to use one more thread for this one. This is a bit of a thankless task, but it'll be worth it in the end. Right, I think we can be happy with that. Right, now fingers crossed when we turn it over. Yay, looks pretty central. Probably not perfect, but that's okay. Just straighten that up if you need to. That's a good thing about lacing, is it just gives you a little bit of flexibility. If it's not exactly how you want it, you can move it around a little bit. There we go. Now I'll show you what that looks like on the board. If you had a little bit bigger board, you could put another one behind that, maybe some fabric or something covering another board just to give it a bit more dimension. I think I'm going to use some pom-pom trim just to go around the edge and make it look really neat. So let's find the end here. I like to start in the middle of the bottom when I do pom-pom trim, just here. And I'm going to use hot glue. You can stitch it on if you want, you can use craft glue, you can do whatever you like. And you just want to make sure your trim's right against the edge of your cross stitch and that you're not showing the trim beyond that edge. You just got your pom-poms. See, you should just see the pom-poms and not any of the trim. Unless you want to see the trim, you can do whatever you like. And we're just going to work our way around. Ooh. A little bit crazy with the hot glue there. Don't burn your fingerprints off. And just keep working your way around the edge. Feel free, if you want to sew on your trim, by all means do. I haven't got the patience for that. All right, we're getting there now. A little bit more to go. You could use rickrack instead of the pom-poms. That would look really cute. Do lace as well. Now this trim was really bright blue. It just didn't really fit in with the Yetis. So I just soaked it in a bit of water to take some of the dye out. I think because it's polyester, it doesn't hold dye particularly well. Now you're going to get all these lovely hot glue strings. Just keep an eye on how that looks from the front. Yep, looking good. Nearly there. And just go around that last corner. Now when I get to the end, I just trim my pom-poms down. Get rid of that, get that out of the way. And then just bring that down out of the way. So you don't get a big overlap. So get rid of any hot glue strings you might have hanging on. Let that dry. And we'll see how that looks on our board. Right, that looks pretty good. So what I want to do, I've got our little cross stitch to put up here with a bow, and I've made the bow. So just work with the placement a bit, see if that needs to be in the middle or if we need to move it slightly to the side to make enough room for our mini cross stitch. So we're ready to finish off our everything board. So we talked about the ribbon, I made the bow. So I'm going to show you how I did that real quick. Just move that out of the way. Now I don't have any of that ribbon left, but I'll show you using a different ribbon. So flat ribbon, I melted the ends of mine to keep the ends from fraying, and I just looped it. So loop back and forward, keeping it flat like this. And then once you make a couple loops, you can make them a little bit shorter so you can see the back loop behind the front loop. And I just did 2 loops on each side, and then I cut my tail here. I'll show you. So cut your tail. Right, so that gives you your bow shape. And then I used a little bit of ribbon. So spread that out a little bit like this, so you can see all the different layers. There you go. And then I used another bit of ribbon and just wrap that around the middle like that. And came around the back and I glued that on. And then cut that ribbon here. And that gives you a ribbon, a nice big bow, just like that. So back to our board. So let's just line this up and make sure it looks nice. So we've got our bow, we've got our finish, a little bit of hot glue on everything, because why not? And then we've got our little cross stitch, which is going to go here, just to finish it off. Like that. So that looks pretty good. Now I think I want my little cross stitch to overlap here. Like that. So I'm going to have to offset my design a bit so that we have enough room for our stitching bit up here. So that's how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to use my hot glue to put that down. So hot glue gun. and just go around the edges. There we go. And then glue that down a bit offset like we laid out. Try not to burn yourself. There we go. And just really press that down until that's all nice and dry. Now we want to just practice placing how you want that. I want that bit of overlap there. And then my ribbon just there, maybe a bit more that way. Just make sure that's nice and neat. Right, so glue our bow down, and I'm going to use a lot of glue because there's a slight height difference. So obviously that's a bit higher, and I don't want my little cross stitch to be on a tilt. So I've used a bunch of glue just to build a bit of height, and I'm going to hold my bow on there until it dries. Right, once that's dried, you get a bit of structure there. Perfect. Gives a bit of height. And we're just gonna add our little cross stitch hoop. Make sure you're happy with your placement. And again, put a good glob of hot glue on your bow. And then just a little bit on the back of your little hoop as well. And just press that nice and firm until that's dried completely. I really like how that looks just as it is. But if you want to, you could add some little Christmas lights like that. That's quite cute, isn't it? Or some little peppermints. But I just want to make sure you can see that that's a cross stitch hoop. So that is the finished project of the everything board for the cross stitch pattern Mr Velleti Gets Ready for Christmas. I hope that's given you some ideas for finishing your project. And not just this one, but any projects at all. Don't be afraid to use your creativity. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.